Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Show Master Data Series. Today, in our first episode, we have maintenance, repair, and operation as our topic. And we have an amazing panel in house. We have with us Conrad Greer, Prospecta partner, founder SPC Results, and Randy Gibson, senior solution architect, Prospecta. So I'm sure you're excited to hear a lot of things about master data, and and it's going to be exciting. I'm telling you, it's going to be so much fun. So we will be sharing some of the topics with you to keep you thinking, and we'll also ask these questions to our experts. So without wasting a single moment, I would pose the first question to Conrad. Over to you, Conrad.
Okay, well, thank you, Malika and Randy. It's great to have this chat about MRO materials. So, yeah, issues that incorrect and old equipment being assigned in your ERP, what it causes, it's sort of the start of the bow wave of problems that you get with poor master data and the cost, the pain, the risks, the frustrations they cause. So, if the asset register is out of date, you really don't have it's hard to make everything else good. So that's the beginning of it. So where your equipment and systems are recorded in the ERP, it needs to be accurate for it to work. Over to you, Randy.
Absolutely, Conrad. And I think it's important that we understand that we normally divide these issues between MRO and plant maintenance. But in this case, MRO is very much tied to what the plant maintenance people are doing. And if they're not updating in the ERP, their equipment as they're changing it out, as you change out that pump and it goes off to be rebuilt, if you're not changing to the new one, if you're not updating these systems, then it creates a problem downhill in MRO that maybe in some cases I've heard plant maintenance people say, well, it's not my problem, but it is your problem, because then when you need a part, you have something down and you need a part, it's not going to be in your warehouse because they're still stocking that old stuff for you. I have seen, I remember I went into a specialty chemical company, and they showed me around their warehouse, and in the back they actually had a storage container, and it had gaskets and stuff that were just stacked 4 feet high all the way through, of gaskets they have ordered for old equipment that was obsolete and no longer in the system. What do you do with that? You're paying inventory money on it. You're storing it. You now can't store the things you need because of it. There are a great many follow-on problems that simply not updating your ERP correctly in plant maintenance will cause for your MRO, and continued for your plant maintenance as well. I'm sure you see that as well, Conrad.
Yeah, actually, and Randy, I think the really big point you made there, all of these things, you need to take a holistic view. And if you look at it from your point of view, that's not a big deal. That's just some old things. But there's supply chain guys that they're trying to find space. They're trying to optimize. They order redundant things. They're relying on that master data. So even if it's obvious to you as on the maintenance team, we got rid of that years ago. The data is what people are using to drive decisions. So that's a real big deal. So I think that's the significance of this topic in here. And the message is you need to work together for success.
Absolutely. We're a team.
Yeah.
And if we're a team, everything will work out better for all of us. And the savings that you can make that we've seen are just huge, both in time and money.
Okay. Right. Malika, we're maybe ready for the next. Okay, so the cost of using non-stock free text identified MRO purchases in maintenance. This is actually a favorite pet peeve of mine. This can be the most expensive mistake you can make. And this actually follows directly on from our previous about teamwork. This is something that happens when the maintenance department gets frustrated with the support they get from the warehouse and procurement, and they do workarounds. And one of them is to use free text items in their planning their work orders. So it ends up being direct charge to the work order. That's not a big problem in itself. But what happens is that the habit gets in that, well, we'll order an extra because we get poor support, and then we end up with excess stock that can't be put into inventory. So it becomes invisible, and it's wherever somebody put it. And you get these lay down yards, squirrel piles, different names go around, but they collect this stuff. And it only has a chance of getting used if the next time that particular part or thing is needed, if the guy that put it someplace comes across it, and that's a very random event. So that's what happens with this. And I've seen clients that just screaming mad at the size and scale of these things. And I've also seen clients, supply chain teams, to try and solve it by limiting what the ERP, make it mandatory for material numbers. That's sort of carrying the fight on. It's not solving the problem. So you want to get good quality data that the maintenance planners can rely on, and then they'll use it. So that's my take on this. But the costs can be enormous when you let this sort of run out of control, and it will happen because the maintenance guys want to get things fixed, and they're looking to get their parts and get the job done.
Yeah, absolutely, Conrad. And I'm a storyteller kind of guy. That's how I try to get the point across. And I'll tell you, had a refinery where they actually bought their planners golf carts to go out into the refinery to write down the manufacturer and make a model of a piece of equipment so they could come back and order the part. Well, they would do that because the equipment wasn't correct in the system, but then they'd come back and order the part, and they'd free text the part, order it. They had actually given the planners a company credit card to charge it on at Granger or whatever so they could get the part in, and the warehouse had become nothing more than handling the UPS or the Granger truck when it came in for the delivery, and calling the planner and saying, hey, it's scheduled, saying, hey, it's here now, you can go to work. Procurement was not able to work discounts because everything was free text. Nothing could be, they couldn't look at it and see what the remaining inventory was or how many they were using a year because everybody free texted in their own way. So it's the lack of accurate data and the lack of being able to having a material catalog that is correct and accurate and full creates expense problems both in labor, again, and material cost, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next one is the cost of job delays that impact production. So this, whatever your business, uptime is the goal. You're producing something, you're providing electric utility or to your clients. You need things running, producing, and when something's down for maintenance, there's a window of scheduled downtime. You need the jobs to execute and complete successfully within that window. Otherwise, you're completely stressing the system, and it's probably going to be revenue and perhaps somebody getting fired. But it's the problems become huge once your maintenance work delays end up impacting production. So the world's sort of moved towards, the goal is reliability centered maintenance. We want to plan the downtime and then do the maintenance correctly within those scheduled windows. That's how we have success. So if we have delays because we ordered the wrong parts or however the mistake, this is where the master data supports getting it right, and where it's weak, we're going to end up with errors that show up. And one of the big bad things that can happen is that we lose production over it.
Yeah, absolutely, Conrad. I think back to a client that we had. We were using MDO to update their descriptions in their materials and get their materials clean, standardized, so that no matter what plant they were in, they knew which material that each material was there, and if it wasn't in my plant, could I get it from another plant? So when we have a reactive maintenance issue and we've got a plant line or something down, how do we get there and we get it up as soon as possible? Well, when we did the material cleanse for these folks, one of their planners told me a story, and he said what happened was we went down, we needed a part, we checked with our supplier, he didn't have it, we checked everywhere we could with our other plants, we couldn't find them at our other plants. They actually, I mean, they're losing millions of dollars. They actually got the corporate jet to fly to China to get the part that they needed and fly back. All right, landed, put the part in, got it up. I was only down 3 days.
Yeah.
Now that we did the data cleanse, they found out that part was actually 2 states away in another plant, but because the descriptions were so varied and so different, they couldn't identify that it was there. And instead they went to China to get the part. So those are the kind of things, and that's a huge deal. That's worst case scenario maybe, but it actually happens. Those kind of things actually happen where you don't know, or maybe you have a pump that's not the same pump, but has the same characteristics, has the same throughput and that type that will work where you're at, but you didn't know it because the data is not complete, it's not full. So those kind of things make huge impacts, not only on production, but on the cost of being down. So I'm sure you've seen like stories as well.
Yeah, Randy, to that, 2 things. One, just you agree completely about the varying descriptions. It often makes these things invisible. But the other point that I take from you, I always orient my thinking to planned maintenance, the schedule, but if that's not where you are on the maintenance maturity curve and you're still working reactive, well, it's in a sense, it's even a bigger deal because you're responding to the call and you got to go out and get it back up. So wherever you are on the maintenance spectrum of planned versus reactive, being able to find the parts that you have is a real big deal.
Absolutely. And if your data's not right, now we're not even talking about preventative maintenance anymore. We're talking about predictive maintenance. Yeah. And if your data's not right, both in MRO and in plant maintenance, then you're not going to be able to make that next step to the current and most up-to-date maintenance processes that you need to, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I think, we're ready for the next here. So the cost of job delays without loss of production time due to issuing incorrect materials. Yeah. So, the last topic we were talking about, this is the big things, everything blows, we're down and everybody's yelling at us. But there's a separate category we talk about is we don't lose production, but we're not being as productive as we can be. And, so we've planned the wrong materials, and a leading cause of planning the wrong materials is going to be poor MRO data. So thought it looked right in the system, it got kitted and got issued, or the job got scheduled and kitted and issued, and and away we go. The guy's doing the work, and no, this isn't right. Well, we got to take it back to the warehouse. So shut that job down. Now we've got crews. Do they wait for the new parts? Do they move on to the next job? It just causes churn, and that is impacting your maintenance efficiency. How much can your department do? Well, when there's reacting to material parts mistakes, you're just losing efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely, Conrad. That's for sure. I know I see situations. I know Esri, I was just thinking this while you were talking. Esri did a study and found that only 40% of maintenance person's time was actually spent turning a wrench. 60% of it was doing other things, looking up spare parts, going back to the warehouse to get the correct spare part because the wrong spare part was ordered, or the operator wrote to the wrong equipment. All of that comes back to either bad MRO data or bad plant maintenance. Those are things that affect us that we don't really realize the cost of that labor, or the cost of not having the right person there to do the work. And it all comes back again to that exact same thing. So we talked about, as you said, we talked about the huge problems, the blow up problems that everybody knows about. These are the day-to-day irritations that are not just an irritation, they're actually costing us time and money, for sure.
Yeah. And I'll have I spoke about the efficiency and the time and money. It's an aspect of frustration that goes across, certainly your maintenance teams. They would just as soon go out and fix something, and when multiple times a week, it's go back to the warehouse. It's frustrating, and the same for warehouse crews. And so one of the roots of that is poor quality identities on your spare parts, and that's something that if you take a holistic view of it, it's a solvable problem, and solvable problem with very good returns. But anyway, I think maybe that's good for this topic. Malika, can we move to the next? Okay. The impacts of issuing wrong materials on the supply chain. Yeah, so this is sort of a variation on that last question. Randy and I were talking about the maintenance team's impact on it, but there's churn for the warehouse people and for the procurement people. Now, some of these parts may need to go back to the supplier. They may have been items that were ordered directly, and we need to return it to the supplier. They may just need to be put back on the shelf in the warehouse. But again, it's this churn factor that is serves no useful purpose. If you did it right the first time, this just wouldn't exist. And so that's the issue that we're talking. The impacts that we're talking about is the poor quality identities on these spare parts. It has an impact on your procurement people who are supporting MRO, and on the warehouse people that are supporting the maintenance team. So that's the topic on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. You have the opportunity, if your data is correct, if your MRO data is correct, you also have the opportunity in procurement to look and see, okay, maybe I'm going to order this particular make and model pump. We need another 100 pumps. I'm going to order these rather than another because I've got these parts setting in stock. I'm already stocked up to be able to make the preventative and the reactive maintenance that I need. We can do those type of things. You have the ability. I know I'm thinking about a mine that I did a project for in Australia, and their solution to their problem of obsolete spare parts was literally to dig a hole and push it in it as they were going to a new version of SAP. That was the only solution they could come up with. Whereas if we had got our material descriptions and our material information right, they would have then maybe been able to tell that while these pumps were obsolete in their mine, there were other mines within Australia of their company that were you still had those pumps that were still using it, and we could have shifted those parts over there for them to be able to use. But because we didn't have the correct information, nobody could help them with that. And so what they actually eventually did, right before go live of their newest SAP system, was dig a hole and push it over and cover it with dirt. That's one way to get rid of the problem, but it's not the best way to get rid of the problem.
And again, to that, that's this holistic view, and decisions. There's no one person or group of people that have this visibility. And we're probably most often talking to enterprise clients, and they're multi-site. So the visibility you have is what's in your master data, and that's a reason to try and make it quality, and then you can make good decisions there.
Absolutely. I'd say that master data is not exciting, but it's not anything that you initially, most people, most manufacturers people, most maintenance people, operators think about, but it really can be the lifeblood of your company and can make such a difference in your profit and loss and your ability to do your business well.
Yeah. To that point, I think a lot of places, it's the costs and the risks just get taken on as a cost of doing business, and so not seeing the opportunity that there are good solutions to this, and they have a high rate of return. Payback is amazingly quick for CFOs looking for how long are we going to get payback, and what's the rate of return. They're not going to find very many opportunities better than fixing bad
Absolutely.
MRO. Yeah.
Absolutely. We look at Prospecta when implementing MDO. We normally are going to see that they're going to get an ROI back within a year, and that's for most projects. That's a great ROI.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the thing I think of this. Well, how much ROI? It depends on how bad your situation is, and I think of this as measuring from the sky down instead of from the ground up.
And Conrad,
if you're really bad, and I think there's probably lots of really bad out there. Well, there's huge opportunity. If you're running a tight ship, there probably still is some good opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never seen perfect master data, and honestly, usually no matter how bad you think it is, it's probably a little worse. So that's just the way it is. That's life. Again, because we see so many different people and so many different opinions about master data, that until the company has a strong master data governance position and they are doing it at a company level, then you're going to see that Conrad's going to do a little different than Randy, and so on. So absolutely.
Yeah, there's no universal
exactly
truth.
Exactly.
But there better is out there, and it's available, and you can very productively go get better.
Yeah, you can get better. We're not looking for perfect. We're just looking for better, for sure.
Okay, now this is a near and dear one to me. The costs and risks in life safety and environmental impact of installing correct spec parts. So this is huge, and I prefer to talk about this more in terms of risk than cost. A lot of these others, what's the cost of having the wrong parts and schedule delays? You can talk about it in terms of cost. This one, installing the wrong specification parts, it fit when they did the repair, but it's not the right metallurgy or something like that. They can be huge, and plants blow up. Lives are great environmental harm, pipeline ruptures. So they're very significant. And well, I have a story. I'll turn it over to you for a bit first, Randy, but I do have one story I want to do on this one.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I agree with you that this is a lot harder to quantify, because when we're talking not so much about, we're talking about life costs and losing a life or being injured or losing our employees or that type of thing. So this is more important to me than just money and dollars and cents. I don't even like to talk about it in dollars and cents, because it's more important to that. But I will tell a quick story and pass it back to you. And that is, I was out doing I got called in on a consulting gig back in the day, and they wanted to know why it seemed like all of their rotating equipment around the refinery was failing. And so we went in there and we studied and we looked at it. We spent a week walking around trying to figure out what was going on. And we just couldn't understand why they were failing. And then we happened to catch, on one of the last days we were there, this young man walking around with a lube gun, and he was lubing all of the equipment. And so I walked over and spoke to him and asked him what he was doing. He told me that all he did was lube. And I said, so how do you determine which lube to use in each piece of equipment at each situation? And he said, well, I used to have 6 or 7 that they made me use, but I finally just focused down on one and I used that one only.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his problem. So, and you think about the safety aspects of not only the pump failing or the motor failing or whatever. You think about the fact that people's safety are at risk just simply because we're not using the correct lube. And so that's one that just comes to mind. I'll go ahead, Conrad. Maybe you've got a better story than that. But
well, yeah, and like I was thinking, like the life safety aspect. So I'm an ex-naval marine engineer, Canadian, but I did spend. I had a tour with the United States Navy overhauling aircraft carriers, and during my tour, the USS Iwo Jima had an accident in Bahrain. 10 sailors lost their lives. Whole boiler room crew. So they went in for a brief work period or long time along shore, and they repaired a high pressure steam valve. The fasteners that were used, the correct size studs and nuts, but they weren't the right. They were soft. Simple terms, they were too soft. And so when they lit off and went out, and they were not even out of the harbor, it started leaking badly. They called the bridge. Before the bridge could stop, the whole main steam valve parted and released high pressure steam and killed all 10 sailors in the room. That's only in 1990. That's not a long time ago. So it was the incorrect specification materials, and there wasn't much that people lost their lives over that. So that's I don't know the details. I've read some reports on the situation, how it traces back to master data, or if it did in this case or not. It may not have, but for companies that that I consult with now, that's how they use their master data is sort of the first line of defense. Now there may be more QA that gets done, but do it right, and then when you do the QA, they're confirming that it's right.
Yep.
You don't want to be leave life safety to is somebody else going to pick up the problem?
Yeah, absolutely, Conrad. I see. When you mentioned that, it made me think that I say when you're building in your ERP, like in SAP, you're building a functional location structure. It's not a lockout tagout. That's not what it's meant for. But it can be a very first stop at looking at your lockout tagout. If you're building your functional location based on the process flow or the digital twin, if you're doing correctly, if you're using a correct characteristics in your materials and you've got that information there and you're not going to make those mistakes. Those things are going to be there for you. So I agree with you that your master data, those type of things are not the first stop, but they are a part of the solution if you use them correctly.
Yeah. And again, back to that first one about the asset registry. So these critical things end up on high pressure systems. And those are known. This is all engineered stuff, and if we do our master data correctly, we can support that and reduce our risks.
For sure, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Now the impact of excessive working capital ties up in MRO inventory. So this is the supply chain guys, and this is where they get beat on by the finance people. Hey, every year you guys have working capital tied up in MRO inventory goes up. Why is that? Can't you get a hold of it? And that's I'd like to say that's a rarity, but it's actually exceedingly common, and it's a very strong indication that we don't have control. The companies don't have control of their MRO master data, and you keep buying stuff. You consume what's needed, jobs, but if you buy stuff that you don't need, it just sits on the shelf. There can be overbuying comes into it as well. But the first aspect of it is that we're buying what we don't or never going to use, and that fix your master data, get a hold of that problem, and then working capital for MRO inventory will reflect what's needed, not the mistakes that we've accumulated.
Yeah, absolutely. I say that I believe that it's not. You're not buying too much. You're buying the wrong stuff in a lot of cases.
Okay.
Now you may be buying too much, but normally you're buying the wrong things, and that's the problem. Is you're buying what you need as well as what you don't need, and that is a real problem. That getting your master data right, getting your MRO spares data right, will definitely help fix for you, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I guess a different take on it, sort of in problem identification. If you look at your working capital tied up in MRO and it's going up every year, that is screaming at you, you've got a problem, and it's in your master data to fix.
Right, right. And it could be a criticality ranking.
Yeah.
It could be that we've marked everything critical spares that we don't need to. That's so we're carrying too much inventory. But if your data is not correct, there's no way that you can do the queries and the reporting to see if that's actually the case. You have to first get the data that you're looking at correct so that you can then use it to make good informed business decisions on.
Okay, are we maybe ready for the next one? Okay, so the impact of ever-growing warehouse space requirements. So this is sort of a follow-on from the previous one. That's sort of the accountant's view. You had $1 million of inventory. Now you got $1.5 million this year. That's a financial look at it. But these things, you have to put them someplace. And when the plant was built, it was scoped out. We need a warehouse of size X. Now we're X plus, and so this can be additional capital requirements. So what we want to do, my suggestion, avoid this by having the right things in the right quantities, and then we don't have this problem of ever-growing.
Yeah, absolutely, Conrad. I completely agree with you. One of the things that I find is that I mentioned a company earlier. They had 3 different freight containers in the back behind their warehouse. They were all full. They had stuff just sitting on the ground on pallets from obsolete parts, those type of things. So they had ever-growing warehouse space requirements that they didn't have room for because they were holding the old stuff as well as the new stuff. And because their data wasn't correct, again, we're using another example of a fact that the data wasn't correct. So they didn't know what to do with the equipment, the materials, the parts. They didn't know that they didn't need them. And they didn't know that their sister locations could use them as well if you could just get them to them and let them know that you had them. So you have that problem. And they also, because their data was not well, and because they were doing, again, free text or whatever, then they were not getting them back to the suppliers in a timely manner where the supplier would take them back. You're not going to call a supplier a year and a half down the line and go, hey, I need you to take these 100 gaskets back. They're going to laugh at you. It's too late for that. So now it's dead inventory sitting there, either in your warehouse or you're buying additional storage area to do it. And again, you're tying up your MRO money in things that have absolutely no value to you whatsoever, for sure.
Yeah. And the other piece of that is as it gets crowded, a lot of these spares have preservation requirements. Motors need to be turned, and you end up overcrowded, and then it makes it difficult to do that preservation. And if you don't do that preservation, when you do get the demand and the item gets called out, it fails in its infancy because it wasn't properly maintained, and overcrowding is one of the issues that drives that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Its lifetime ends before it ever comes off the shelf.
yeah,
Yep, for sure.
um, yeah. I actually, and I know one client that I worked with when they got to the point where when they had a failure on they were using crushers was one of their elements of their system, and when they had a crusher failure, the first thing they did was start to overhaul the spares, the spare part, the spare crusher, because
Right.
they had been down this road where they had a failure, they rush out the replacement, they install it, and then it fails. So um, they had a preservation issue, and certainly overcrowding was one of the pieces of that. There's more elements to that story, but
Yep.
to
Yep.
what we're talking about, uh, preservation is impacted when you're overcrowded.
Right, absolutely. I know it's about time to wrap up. One of the things that I will say that I was thinking about as we discussed this, I know this talk will probably has brought in MRO people, and that's what they came to hear. But I'll say to you this, being also a plant maintenance guy, um, that if you're having these problems with MRO, if you're having these problems in your spares, then I would, and I tell this when I'm on a call with a client for Prospecta for MDO, say, talking to materials, say, talk to your plant maintenance guys, see if they're interested in getting involved and listening as well and
Mm.
talking about their issues because, and I always say that the bomb is the one that connects both together, that
Yeah.
building materials is what plant maintenance is interested in, MRO is interested in. But if you can get them involved, they'll a lot of times help fund and they'll understand how it's going to benefit them. And sometimes we don't work as a team, but in this case, if we can work as a team, we're going to make everybody's both sides life easier. We'll make procurement's life easier as well as warehouse and maintenance. But there's a lot that can be done in the master data area that will greatly impact your business, your profitability, but also your work life. And I'm a big believer in um, let's spend our time doing things that are going to be beneficial.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this, yeah, the starting point is talk to your the other functions, the stakeholders. So you've got maintenance, you got supply chain, and often the IT department has the systems. Uh, all three need to work with each other, and the daily grind. These things they may look like your competitors, but how you solve this is by working together,
Together
and that's going to lead you to success.
for
Thank you
sure.
so much. I would love to thank both Randy and Conrad for this amazing session. This was so informative and so much of value, and this will be available on demand. So, if you would like to connect to our panelists, especially to Prospecta, of course, you can reach us on our email. And we are showing it right here. So if you would like to connect with Prospecta or Randy, you can email us at contact@prospecta.com. Also, SPC results, the website is right here. Please kindly note. And you can also email Conrad as well. So you can email Conrad at I'm just going to share Conrad's email as well. So Siege Greer at spcresults.com with all your queries, and wonderful connecting till next time. Please be tuned in, and we will be super excited to bring you another episode of exciting conversations, informative and full of knowledge.